Thanks for your support, Jason. I appreciate yours and Kerry's support and your whole network. It's really been very beneficial to me and a whole lot of others. I encourage everyone to use your resources that you have. But thanks, Jason.
Welcome to the Creating Wealth Show with Jason Hartman. You're about to learn a new slant on investing, some exciting techniques, and fresh new approaches to the world's most historically proven asset class that will enable you to create more wealth and freedom than you ever thought possible. Jason is a genuine self-made multimillionaire who's actually been there and done it. He's a successful investor, lender, developer, and entrepreneur who's owned properties in 11 states, had hundreds of tenants, and been involved in thousands of real estate transactions. This program will help you follow in Jason's footsteps on the road to your financial independence day. You really can do it. And now, here's your host, Jason Hartman, with the complete solution for real estate investors.
Welcome to episode 1197. As you hear this, I will be just wrapping up our Venture Alliance Mastermind Retreat in beautiful Savannah, Georgia. This interview I had with one of our investment counselors, Kerry. Of course, he has his own show he's been on over the years, and he kind of interviewed me, but I kind of interviewed him at the same time, so it's sort of a joint interview. So let's go ahead and get to that right now.
Jason, I credit as being one of the true investment visionaries of our time, because everything you've done, Jason, has been proven out over the last 13, 14 years. So with that, welcome to the show.
Well, hey, thanks. It's good to be back on, and good to have you on my show as well, Kerry. It's not perfect, but it's better than everything else. That's what I'll say about income property. And hey, the question is, when, not if, but when will the recession arrive? I kind of feel like we're at Christmas Eve waiting for Santa to show up, I guess in sort of a bad way. It's a perverse way to say it maybe, but you know, it's like we've been talking about the recession coming for quite a while. A lot of people have, and when I say we, I don't mean us, because I kind of thought this economy would last longer than usual, and it has. But, you know, it's not going to go on forever. There are some ominous signs out there, aren't there?
Of course, there's ominous signs. But one thing I'd like to point out, there's trends in place that are causing this economy to continue on. Number one is all of this dollar-denominated debt that has been taken out by overseas trading partners, and they're paying back this debt in dollars. We got $1 trillion a year, roughly, in debt repayments coming back, in dollar debt repayments. And then another trend that is totally overlooked, misunderstood, and neglected because the powers that be don't want you to think about it, the invasion taking place in Europe now and the failing political systems there. Look, for many people, they think it's Germany in the 30s again. And where are they going to put their money? Are they going to go put it in the Bank of China and hope that the Chinese cash their check? Or is it coming to American banks and businesses?
Yeah, right. America has always been known as the Brinks truck of the world. In other words, the secure place to put your capital. And I think now that is just as true as it's always been, maybe even more so. And you're right. Tell me, though, you know, the European immigration disaster, it is a disaster. You know, it's interesting. I remember reading something maybe 2 years ago. It was a man who was talking to his daughter. I think his daughter had just graduated from college, and she was kind of making the decision on whether she should take her sort of customary trip to Europe that all those kids take, right, when they're young, right? And I think someone was in the room with them and said, well, listen, there's no rush, because the daughter was deciding between going to Europe on a trip for the summer or doing something else, maybe taking an internship. I can't remember what it said. But the point is that someone in that conversation said, Europe will always be there. And then he says he pondered that afterwards, and no, it will not always be there. Now, granted, the land will be there, but Europe is changing dramatically now. I was born in Europe. I know you know that. I go there pretty much every summer. Sometimes I go there twice a year. it's a disaster. I mean, it's sad. We're witnessing the end of a once great continent. And, it's not just the recent rash of immigration from the Middle East. Before that, it was socialism and just kind of like prosperity even before that leads to socialism and apathy. It is a sad state of affairs, what's going on in Europe. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's not all bad, of course, but I don't know. It's pretty bad.
And they're in denial over it, so they won't address the problem. Only guy who wants to do something is the guy in Austria and the guy in Italy running. Now, we'll see how long they last. But you can flight capital, and therefore I'm actually bullish on New York City real estate for the first time in a long time.
That's a weird statement. New York City real estate right now is crashing. What are you talking about?
And wait till the foreign money starts pouring in there. New York's real estate.
Well, but what do you mean it has been? I mean, I did a show a few years back about how all the Russian money was coming to New York City and, bidding up these properties. And, the 1,100 square foot condo was $3.2 million. And,
but that's like the upper class of Europe, upper financial class. When the people who are worth, say, $5 million start piecing this stuff together, they're going to come to the major cities, all right? And even though they've done their best to stop the money laundering and flight capital and all that, it's going to happen at a rate that we've never seen. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow or the day after. They don't really think about state taxes and confiscatory taxes and government inefficiency and all that the way Americans think of it, because it's our country. We're more familiar with it. They think of, hey, New York City real estate, that's the bedrock of value. So you're going to see.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. So the thing I think we don't want to mislead listeners, though, in thinking that, I should run out and buy an overpriced condo in New York City, because the reality is that is a highly speculative market with terrible cash flow, obviously. So, but it is interesting what you said, that's interesting. Let's talk about a couple bullet points about the economy. I'm looking at this article that you're looking at. Do we credit Trump for the amazing run that we've had, right? That's one issue. And then the other one, is it going to last? How long will it last? What about this looming debt? Let's tackle a couple of those items.
Yeah, well, look, I don't think, and I was very skeptical when Trump became president, that he could keep this thing going or even improve upon it, because we were headed for a recession, in my estimation, when he was elected. Some extent, it's psychological. Other extent, it's lower tax rates. So, for instance, you heard the news probably that U.S. Steel is putting $1.2 billion, investing it in their steel mills at home here.
Yeah,
that's two reasons, exciting. One of which we'll talk about more later is that, number one, the tariffs have definitely cut American appetite for foreign steel. But the second one is the bonus depreciation aspect of the new tax law, where you get to write off 100% of your CapEx day that you do it.
Let's explain what that means. Let's not assume everybody gets that. So that means that if you have a steel factory, a steel mill, or whatever business, and you spend money to improve that business, that's called capital improvement or CapEx, that is deductible, versus before the Trump tax plan that we have now, you had to wait to get that deduction. It took a lot longer to realize it. Now it's more immediate, right?
Yeah, you
That's
wrote off. So if a car lasted or a truck lasted 5 years, you wrote off the value of that vehicle over 5 years. If a machine lasted 12 years, then you wrote it off over 12 years. So you spent $12 million on a machine, you wrote off, just for argument's sake, $1 million a year. Now, the day you buy it, the day it goes in, you write off $12 million. So effectively, you're just deducting that off your taxable income, and you're paying less in taxes, which is why Amazon paid no taxes last year, besides foreign tax shelters and everything else.
So let's wait on the Amazon thing for 1 second. So everybody needs to realize the beauty of this for the USA. I mean, it is incredible, right? The combination of what Trump is doing, okay? And listen, I got my reservations about Trump. Don't give me some email saying, oh, it sounds like a commercial for Trump. All I ever said is that Trump would be good for the economy. And hey, I've been completely right about that. And I think I'll continue to be right about that. And I think, Kerry, you probably said the same thing. So here's the thing, though. Think about what he's doing, right? You institute tariffs, or at least talk of tariffs, right? You don't have to actually do them. You can just say you're going to do it, and the market reacts. So you start the trade war, the trade war. They all keep talking about the trade war. And then you bring jobs back to America in doing this. And then you basically are signaling to American manufacturers and American businesses of any type, look, you got a waiting market here, because now you're going to have a much more level playing field to compete on price. We understand that you American companies have a much higher regulatory burden. You've got OSHA requirements. You've got minimum wage requirements. You've got a whole host of regulations that your foreign competitors don't have to tolerate.
Yep.
So we're going to level the playing field with tariffs, okay? And then you throw in this new tax plan that says, look, and if you want to open a factory or increase the size of your plant for this new waiting market of consumers that were formerly lost to your foreign competitors, you could feel pretty safe to do it. And boy, that is a huge stimulation to the economy.
For sure.
Right?
And it's the reason why, even though the first quarter is generally the slowest quarter of the year, you've seen a 3.2% increase, because there's so many bad factors the first of the year. It's the hangover from Christmas buying season, all these things that generally tend to depress the economy in the first quarter. And this year it went 3.2%.
It's amazing. Incredible GDP.
It's like experts surprised. Experts not believing. Experts caught flat-footed as usual, because it's experts, right? Who are they?
Right.
Like our bullet points here. And how long can it last? It'll last until it doesn't. A trend is your friend until the end.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, so I was on someone's show yesterday, and I talked a lot about how I don't think the next recession will be led by real estate or a mortgage meltdown like it was the last time around. I mean, the last time around, it was quite significantly real estate, right? This time, we don't have all those toxic mortgages out there. Now, we do have toxic student loans. We do have some toxic auto loans and other types of consumer financing out there. And then we've got things that are kind of above my pay grade, sovereign debt, and things that I don't even kind of pretend to really understand in a real deep way. I mean, I guess I have a shallow understanding of them. But what do you think is going to be the next thing? I mean, look, the slowdown will come.
Oh, yeah.
Where will it come from?
I see it probably in the financial sector. They've been making all these off-balance sheet loans. The one thing that bankers are really expert at, international bankers, big banks, is figuring out how to lose money, how to loan money and not get paid back. When it comes to that, they are professionals. Nobody is their equal, Jason.
Well, I mean, you're saying that as if they do it on purpose. Is there some conspiracy theory behind that?
No, they do it recklessly. Right? They lend recklessly. It is the credit cycle that causes the eventual recession, because all of a sudden they look at their book and they say, wait a second, half of these loans aren't performing. We got to stop. And then they call in all the good loans to liquidate. And, they've loaned trillions of dollars to hedge funds. The hedge funds are not doing too well right now. Some of them are, but largely the industry is a bit depressed. And I don't know what it'll be, but it's going to be a financially led recession when it does come. The good thing is that if leadership is in place that says, we don't need too big to fail Bank of the United States, we'll just close it down and we'll protect all the depositors, and we'll use what we would have bailed that bank out with. We'll take that money and recapitalize a new bank that's almost too big to fail. It could be a great opportunity to really drain that sewer known as our financial sector.
So we'll see what happens. So let's take this more into real estate investing. What does this mean for real estate investors? What should they do? What are your clients saying to you? in the marketplace as you have all these discussions every day with investors? What are
Well,
they?
what they're saying, for instance, talked to a lady the other day, she's getting 2 or 3% on her money in whatever investment security that she was in, and it's just not cutting it, and she wants to retire one day. Then we look at a piece of real estate and forget about the appreciation, forget about equity pay down, amortization of the mortgage, which is all positives, but just a cash on cash return, Jason, of 8%. You just can't find that anywhere. And she was looking closer to her area in California, and properties are doing 3 to 5% return, and they're overpriced. If you're lucky, you get 3 to 5%. So that's one thing that I hear. Another thing is diversification, that I've cleaned up on the market. I've really done well, but I'm nervous about it, and I don't want to have all my eggs in one basket. Plus, I'm not getting cash flow on my investment because I'm hoping for appreciation. I'm not invested in the dividend princes or whatever they call them, the Dow dividend stocks. And so there's a little nervousness, and there's a desire to shift into other asset classes. So I see that. And I see people who have just said, like so-and-so down the street from me, we started out the same. He got into real estate. He moved out of the neighborhood. He's living on the water someplace.
Upgraded life because of real estate
getting
investing,
mailbox
right?
money every month and not working. It's like, why can't I do that? And I said, well, you can do that. You just have to take the steps. Requires a little bit of patience. You're not going to have, in all likelihood, stellar returns unless they decide to put a highway through your house and eminent domain you. Then you could do really well. But otherwise, be content to make good cash on cash return. And then when you add in all the other bundles, which you're the biggest proponent of, it kind of becomes a no-lose situation. And the problem is, from our standpoint, Jason, is we can't keep inventory in stock here. No sooner does a home get listed than it's gone. So it kind of becomes an urgency that you do something now rather than waiting till later.
Yeah, I think that's always the thing, a year from now, 3 years from now, if you didn't start or you didn't increase the size of your portfolio, depending on where you are in the game, you're going to wish you had. And don't be the coulda, shoulda, woulda person. That's the important thing, because the regrets almost always come from not doing it. They occasionally come from doing it. I mean, people, if they've done a lot of investing, they'll have a story like, oh, I got this one lemon property. It's just always a problem. I just never get good tenants. And hey, what I'd say to that is, number one, it's the law of large numbers. We're going to have some bad experiences. Just expect it and hey, deal with it. It's going to happen, right? But the other thing is, if you want to try to avoid those, don't buy the junky properties. Buy the better quality properties. Now, look, I know a lot of our clients listening, they love those cheap little properties, but I'm telling you, by and large, just on the law of averages, you'll do better and have better experiences with better quality properties.
I agree with you, except for one thing. We've got Pennsylvania now, York, Central PA.
That's not far from your old neighborhood, right?
There's a ways from there, but I consulted to a mortgage bank there, and it's coming back. It's an up-and-coming little beat-down blue-collar city, and the properties there, the architecture is beyond belief, okay? And we've got some renovated townhouses that you or I would gladly live in if they were in the area we wanted to, Jason. These properties are primo and under $100,000, and they've got 8 to 10% cash on cash returns, meaning if you put up $35,000 and that includes your closing costs, you will make, if it's 10%, you'll make $3,500 per year on your money. That's the first year. And then presumably rents are going to go up. I mean, the rental markets all over the country, the rents are going up sky high. So that's one market where I say on a less expensive expenditure, you can get a phenomenal property that's immaculate. They're beautiful. So I really think that's one. And you can go take a look at it. Just go over to jasonhartman.com and click the properties button and check out Pennsylvania. Highly recommend. And I like that semi-rural, semi-urban area of Pennsylvania. It's become much more stable, and it's going to benefit from the steel boom as well. So not too far from Bethlehem. People can live in York and drive to where these mills are going to be.
It's kind of amazing that we're even having this discussion. I kind of never thought we'd have a discussion like this because I just keep thinking of the Bruce Springsteen song, Allentown, where they're closing all the factories down. It's kind of on the best side, the best, most optimistic hope is maybe we're in a little mini new industrial revolution part two, you know? That might be too optimistic, but maybe. But at least there's things are coming back this way, so it's really kind of refreshing. That's nice. And of course, we've got a whole bunch of other markets, as you all know. Keep those in mind, whether it be the Florida markets, the Tennessee, Ohio, Arkansas, a little bit of inventory there, not much. Indiana, has been our longest running market.
And I'll tell you why.
You know
why?
Yeah, I don't know what you're going to say,
opinion,
but why?
Anyway, for what it's worth, is that Midwesterners still have a great work ethic. They still buy American cars there, biggest American car market, and they're just more American than the rest of us.
More American, yeah. Interesting way to put it. Good stuff. Any final thoughts to wrap it up? Where it's going, what investors should do, anything else?
100% behind real estate now, because if you were a commodity trader and you know how to trade pork futures, you could have doubled or tripled your money over the past 4 months.
And you could have lost it all too.
More than likely, you would have lost it.
Got a funny story about that. When I was a kid, I used to go to my grandparents' house on a farm in upstate New York a lot for the summer. And I remember my very uneducated grandfather, who used to be a coin collector, and he was a real estate investor a little bit. He was a farmer. Also, he played the commodities market. And I got to adjust this for inflation because I have no idea what the number is today. In real dollars, I remember him talking constantly one summer about how he lost $92,000 in 4 hours in pork bellies. And I'm like, what is pork bellies, But then I realized, he was playing the commodities market, right? Story. And so crazy.
So,
crazy stuff.
It's like if you live in a house or you live in an apartment, you know how to take care of it. If there's a leaky faucet, you call the plumber. Well, basically, when you buy investment property, it's the same deal. You've already got the skills to manage it. You have to rely on other people because presumably not going to be in your market, but you skills.
Or hopefully you'll self-manage and consider that, and we can help you do it.
Self-management is really a great thing, and it might not be for everybody, but I think a lot more people can do it, Jason, than ever thought they could.
I'll put it this way. It's much easier than you might think it is. Okay, that's all I'll say. It's not perfect. Nothing's perfect, but it's a lot easier than you think.
I remember worked with a guy who was doing foreclosures, and when he had to get prices on stuff because he knew he wanted the house, he'd call up a contractor and say, hey, I'm going to buy this property. Can you go take a look at it for me and tell me how much it's going to cost to fix? And he'd do that, 3 guys. And while you're at it, could you send me some pictures? And they would do it. And then he'd figure out if he wanted to buy it, and he'd pick the cheapest guy or the guy with the best reviews, and he would hire that guy to fix it. And then the same thing, if the tenant's in there.
He was crowdsourcing them to go do his inspections.
His due diligence. So the beauty, though, Jason, is, look, I remember we owned some properties in New Jersey, and the guy would call up and say, I've got a broken faucet. My brother was so smart about self-management. He would say, can you fix it? Yeah, I can fix it. How much do you think it'll cost you? Probably about $50. How about if I take $75 off of next month's rent and you fix it? Oh, okay. And they would do it. So you have to be creative, and you have to understand human nature and get the tenant or others in the area to be your agents voluntarily, incentivize them to do it.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that. I just said this on another interview that I did with our client, Drew Baker, who has been doing these ongoing shows, he's just contributing to the community just for free. He doesn't get paid anything. He doesn't get any benefit other than self-expression, I guess, and helping people. But he's been on the show quite a few times. He spoke at our recent Meet the Masters event about self-management. And one of the things that I said on that recent interview with him is I said, look, every real estate guru will tell you you should go have it. You need a team, right? You need a team of people to help you execute on your plans to build a nice real estate portfolio. And, that's true enough. I have no argument with it. I'd say the same thing. But one of the overlooked team members is your tenant. All your tenants are part of your team. They really are. Most tenants are very nice, very decent, and extremely helpful people who will be your advocate, who will shop around and help you get the best price. They want to feel like they're part of something, and they will meet the contractors. They will find the contractors for you. It's amazing how the tenant becomes your ally. Admittedly, sometimes you're at odds with your tenant if they're not paying the rent and you got to be tough with them. I get it. But mostly that's not the way it is. Mostly they're one of your team members. They're helping you. It's a wonderful
and you
thing.
just have to use them to your advantage. And hey, if somebody you're going to rent to happens to be a handyman or a contractor, small contractor, and you've got other properties around there, use that person to your advantage. There's lots of instances of this. And now with cameras and smartphones, you say, oh, there's a leaky faucet. Can you send me a picture? How about if I just order that faucet and you install it and we'll take X off?
Right.
Gives you so much capabilities, but you got to deal with people effectively to self-manage because, you're not there yourself. But with smartphones, it's almost like you're there.
It really is easy. So anybody listening, you should probably have, you probably shop on Amazon, for example. You should have in your Amazon address book all of the addresses of your different properties with the names of your tenants attached to each of them. Of course, you may rotate the tenant names every few years, but the property address will be the same. And just send things to them. Send them a little treat once in a while, a gift for them. But also you can, send them a new ceiling fan and, they can have someone come over and install it. Be a little careful with this stuff with liability and so forth. Okay. Obviously you got to be smart and be well insured. Maybe talk to your insurance broker about this kind of thing. But the best way to source things is to break up the supply chain, buy the product yourself and have it sent right. They'll just ship it right to the property with a click of a mouse and usually for free and usually in 2 days or maybe even the same day. And I'm talking about Amazon Prime. And then, just have a handyman install it. Upgrade the properties for the tenants. If you're self-managing, a lot of this stuff gets a lot cheaper and a lot easier, and the tenants become much more appreciative. They stay longer. They don't turn over the property in bad condition. It's just a better relationship.
It's all about relationships. I mean, you said it really well. Hey, if you look at the place and you think, it's Christmas time, I'll send them some new towel racks. Right. Send them a gift that improves your property. Self-serving gift. But you're making it better for them as well.
Right.
Send them a new light fixture.
It's a win-win. It's a win-win.
It costs you $40 for a new light fixture.
Or less. It'll cost you $25 or less, $18.
There's so many things you could do, and it's the little things that really make your relationship, people appreciate you, that you're not just a blood-sucking landlord, that you just care about the money and you don't care about anything else. It's like you're in it together.
Yeah, right. That's when you self-manage, that is almost always the vibe. When you've got a manager and there's distance, it's just not. So, yeah, it's interesting. I've come full circle on that. I really, I've become much more of a fan of self-management. And what's interesting about that is when I owned properties locally years ago, before I became a nationwide investor in 2004, I would never dream of hiring a property manager. Of course, I always managed my own properties. It was so easy. Like I told the story before about this one property that was in Irvine, California, and it was 10 minutes from my office and maybe, 12 minutes from my house. Okay. And the tenant was there for 3 years. I went over to the house after they had moved out to just take a look at it. And I realized, even though this property was 10 minutes from me, I haven't been here in 3 years. It sort of didn't matter that it was local or it could have been 3,000 miles away. It would have been the same experience.
That's really funny and very illustrative of the concept we're talking about. Maybe you shouldn't do it on your first or your second. Maybe you've got a property manager you're not happy with, but you've got a tenant you love that loves you, and you both kind of conspire to eliminate the middleman, if you will.
Yeah, good idea. And look, if you don't like self-management, you can always hire a property manager the next day. Right. So there is a wide availability of managers that would love to have your account at any time you decide it's not for you. So you can always go back. It's not like breaking up with your boyfriend or girlfriend, right? Maybe you can't go back that time. But with this, you can easily go back, right?
It's like Rocky said in the movie, I'm very available, right? The property managers are very available.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Instances where you absolutely have to use them, but we don't need to get into them because they don't apply to our clients. But it's a viable option. It takes some getting used to. You got to keep good records, okay? Because you got to know how much money you spent and how much money came in, because the tax man wants to know that.
We got to wrap it up, but let me just address that for 1 minute, okay? So, of course, the Property Tracker software is a fantastic tool for that, propertytracker.com. But a lot of times people ask me, well, how do you deal with your bank accounts? And should I set up 29 LLCs? And, I've already talked about that. I'm not going to go into it. But let me just address the bank account issue. I have some bigger properties. I have a mobile home park. I have a couple of apartments, bigger properties. But for my single family home properties, I just have one master account. God, I don't want to mislead. I might have two accounts, okay? But I mostly use one account for expenses. And then at least I don't have my property stuff mingled in with other stuff. Okay. So it's like when I go to my CPA every year for taxes, if there was a transaction related to one of those single family homes in this batch, it happened in this account, right? Yeah. I know that much. So it's not that hard to figure it out. Yeah. I don't think you need a separate bank account for each property. Some people ask me that. You can do it. I think it's kind of overcomplicated though. I just think you need one account for all your properties and just keep it separate from everything else. That's all. And
one other thing we should mention, we kind of talked about it, but if you need to set up an LLC, I can help you do that. I was a lawyer in a past life. It's not legal work. It's just paralegal work. Simple enough to do. Yeah. We can do it together if you want, and don't let that be an obstacle to doing what you know you need to do. And I guess that's about it.
Yeah, that's a great little helpful service, Kerry, because you were a lawyer for many, many years. So
felt like hundreds of years, but it wasn't. But I've done hundreds of LLCs, can do up the articles for you, all that stuff. And there's do's and don'ts. You should probably put together a do's and don'ts list of setting up an LLC, Jason.
Hey, good talking with you. Happy investing, everybody. Go to jasonhartman.com for more info.
And send me an email at Kerry, Kerry, at jasonhartman.com. Any questions or comments, LLC issues, whatever, just send it off to me and I'll answer it or tell you to hire a lawyer.
Sounds good. Thanks again and happy investing. Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.